members of Congress, Ms. Vice President, distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This afternoon, I have the honor and duty to report on the State of the Union. The past week has been marked by intense debate and deliberation over the direction this country should take. The Presidential Cabinet and I have discussed how to meet the immediate short-term challenges the nation faces and the long-term goals we must set to create a better future. Make no mistake, the last few days have been tough. Debate has been contentious, ideological differences clear and sharp. Additionally, in the short span of 1 week, we have not seen one, not two, but three crises. The near malfunction of a nuclear reactor, protests by anti-nuclear groups at Washington, D.C., and the brutal suppression of protesters in Saudi Arabia and Syria. Each of these crises has challenged this administration to think long and hard, not just about what type of immediate response we should provide, but also about what these events imply for the future of America. However, ladies and gentlemen, I believe the State of the Union is strong. It is strong enough to not only handle these crises, but also to embrace and learn from them, ultimately reforming America based on the lessons of these challenges. The promise of America's future is luminous because we are not afraid of these challenges. Right now, as I speak, Japan is still struggling to handle its own crisis. Brave and selfless nuclear workers are sacrificing their lives to prevent a catastrophic nuclear meltdown at the Fukushima nuclear reactor. Yet the battle to stabilize those plants could take up to months. Hundreds of thousands of people have had their homes destroyed, their livelihoods ruined, the lives of their loved ones lost. The narrowly averted nuclear meltdown has forced us to question the safety of our own nuclear practices and whether pursuing a cleaner and less oil-dependent future is worth the risk of calamity. I believe we, the United States, should not and will not shrink from this challenge. Rather, we should and will do our best to meet it. That is the American way. America has always been a nation of innovators. Edison sparked the electricity industry. The Wright brothers invented the airplane. Today's generation is no different. However, we are still facing great and immense challenges when it comes to investing in American alternative energy research. The problems are manifold. They are economic, they are technological, but most importantly, they are ideological. To successfully meet the energy demands of the 21st century, America must undergo a fundamental paradigm shift. We must do what we have always done, adapt to circumstances with our indomitable spirit of innovation. We can no longer continue to support our old consumption habits without developing our renewable energy industry. It is simply and utterly unsustainable. It is for this reason that I propose we invest in green research and architecture, including the creation of a specialized federal grant aimed towards funding green building projects. These policies will help stimulate job creation and set a precedent for other environmental policies. Instead of yesterday's energy, it is imperative we focus on tomorrow's. This paramount struggle to create a greener future, however, is not something America can undertake alone, nor should it be. The preservation, the restoration, and the protection of the environment are critical responsibilities that falls upon the international community. It is this necessity that compels us, as stewards of the earth, to organize another climate change conference. I propose America insists that the new International Climate Change Conference set ambitious and concrete but feasible regulations and goals. I also encourage the discussion of the newest technologies and research regarding clean energy. With the most sincere and dedicated effort and cooperation of global members, the havoc that climate change will undoubtedly continue to wreak upon Earth can ultimately be averted. As a member of this international community, a leader of the free world, and the world's biggest economy, America has important responsibilities in safeguarding universal human rights and also in defending its economic interests. The recent revolutions and protests in the Middle East have re-emphasized the importance of these duties. However, Many have expressed doubt at the feasibility of these duties, believing they are mutually exclusive. But by taking the right precautions and actions, I believe we can balance the responsibilities and achieve peace in the Middle East region. We must not make the same mistake as our predecessor, especially at times of heavy deficit, to again preoccupy ourselves with Middle Eastern affairs and decide to be the decided world to uphold universal virtues. But instead, under this administration, we will be the arbiter. We will not risk our economy, nor will we risk the violation of principal human rights. To quell the recent unrest in Saudi Arabia, Syria, Bahrain, Yemen, and Israel-Palestine, we have called upon negotiations, ensuring non-violent measures to solve the conflict between the human rights activists and the governments with opposing political stances. The plans for negotiation will proclaim our neutrality, which would thus safeguard our economic interests while not endorsing human rights violations. This afternoon, as we speak, countries such as Libya and the Ivory Coast are struggling and fighting to achieve independence from cruel and unjust dictators. It is the same struggle that America fought 200 years ago, the fight for freedom and equality. We understand their plights. Therefore, I suggest that we call upon the United Nations to draft forth a resolution to impose effective sanctions on Ivory Coast and Libya, which would coerce the tyrants to give up power that rightfully belongs to the people of the countries. In addition, sustaining our role as the arbiter will transfer the responsibility of the no-fly zone in Libya to the Arab League, NATO, and UN. Another foreign issue that we are all too familiar with is the Afghan war, a war that our predecessor called for, or a war that we are obligated to end. Too many good men and women have died. We grieve for them. They all fought for a single objective, to obtain democracy and justice in Afghanistan. For that, they deserve nothing less than our utmost respect. However, to ensure their efforts and sacrifices were not in vain, I believe we must muster what additional force we have to close out this war and pull out our troops by 2014. We need to give the Taliban a few final blows to weaken terrorism in the Afghanistan area. That is the short-term goal. In the long run, we need to give Afghanistan the ability to defend itself militarily, to check its own government corruption, and one day, the ability to govern itself and to be the master of its own fate. To achieve these long-term and short-term goals, we propose the deployment of 10,000 American troops. These men and women will continue to undermine the terrorist efforts, to work with Afghanistan armed forces, and give them the training they need to fight and deal with the Taliban independently. There is another fundamental issue that this country must address. It hits very close at home, and is something that directly affects the everyday lives of thousands and millions of Americans. What I'm talking about is transportation. It's no secret that America, despite being the leading economy of the world, has infrastructure that falls behind the standards of other developed nations, such as Japan. The reason for this, however, is not because of American industry's inability to compete technologically. America has always been a nation of pioneers. Our experts have always been at the forefront of the research. Rather, the source of America's failure to maintain good infrastructure lies within a lack of concerted government effort, both federal and state. I plan to change that. Our economy has recently seen an upswing. More jobs are being created. More families can put food on the table. Both small business and big business are making profits again. But this is not enough. In order for America to truly prosper, more must be done. That's why in order to further spur economic progress and growth and address problems of infrastructure, I propose a joint effort by both federal and state government to repair and improve existing MRT and highway infrastructure. In the short run, this will create many blue-collar jobs, but in the long run, it will create white-collar jobs such as architects and engineers, and save Americans lots of money that they will otherwise spend on gas. To lower barriers on growth and investment, I've ordered a review of government regulations. When we find rules that are unnecessary an unnecessary burden of business, we will fix them. But I will not hesitate to create common sense safeguards to protect Americans. This is the reason we passed reform that finally prevents health insurance inefficiencies. Our current federal healthcare is inefficient and slow. One of the causes of this inefficiency is because of unorganized documentation of health and medical records. Therefore, we propose to invest in electronic health information technology systems to establish constructive electronic system for all medical and health records. This will allow for a more unified and effective database and save taxpayers millions of dollars. Besides the right to healthcare, one of the most fundamental human rights is the right to a proper education. In order to secure America's future, we must take a good, hard look at what this future needs. And what it needs is for a well-educated future American generation. America's current education system is holding our students back, my bad. Part of this is the lack of a common curriculum, which provides a uniform set of basic knowledge and skills high school students to graduate with. This needs to change. Under the new administration, we will see changes that enable students to leave high school with the same set of fundamental knowledge and skills as their peers from another state. I understand that there is a common belief that the government imposes regulations on the public, on private industries, and on small businesses. It will never do so on its own. Some may think our bureaucracy, for whatever reason, be it perceived size or inefficiency, lacks the ability to discipline itself effectively. They think that although the American economy has been roaring back, federal spending and the deficit are still at historic highs. They think Washington can't figure out how to manage its money. But I'm here today to tell you that's not true, not under this administration. We understand the need to save and cut costs where we can for the sake of alleviating the tax burden of Americans. We understand clearly that the critical step in winning the future is to get out from this mountain of debt. One policy, thus, I'm proposing, is to tackle this to reduce various areas of energy usage in the federal government. This will put more money back in the hands of the American public and put less greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Even more importantly, we're calling for the end of Bush-era tax cuts to the upper class. Trickle-down economics does not work. It is time we ask billionaires to give up their tax breaks rather than mainstream Americans to give up their entitlements and grants. Instead of tax cuts for the wealthiest 2% of Americans, we'll be giving these tax cuts to lower and middle class, the nation's true consumer base. In addition, another crucial problem regarding the state of our economy and deficit is America's large outflow of cash through offshore investments and foreign savings. Thus, I propose we push for tax breaks for foreign firms investing in the U.S. I also call for the creation of an expatriation tax, which would encourage businesses to base their operations in America, ultimately stimulating the economy. This afternoon and the past week, I've asked a lot of Americans. In order to meet the challenges in our path, we must have the courage to change. But I believe that Americans have always had this courage, especially when the obstacles are the most pressing. Thus, fellow Americans, please support our proposals to invest in the future. To reclaim America's bold, innovative spirit, let us, America, widen the scope of possibilities, deepen the meaning of liberty and freedom. The State of the Union is strong because the ideals of America live on. And the ideals of America live on in you, its people. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.